Ever since the Malayalam film industry has had to confront mounting allegations of sexual abuse and sexual harassment, not a day seems to go by without another woman coming forward to tell her story. On the program today, we'll be speaking to somebody who has been a sexual assault and rape survivor, somebody who has bravely spoken about everything that she has experienced years after it happened and also shared how young she was when it happened. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be speaking with actor Sowmya. Off screen, of course, her name is Dr. Sujata. And she has come forward and spoken about how she was raped, groomed, raped, and treated like a sex slave by a well known Tamil director. She has also spoken about, and she's one of many women who've been speaking out, horrific details, rods being inserted into her private parts, how the man who did this to her actually called her his daughter, how she was scared, intimidated, like so many have been. But the Hema Committee report that speaks about the rights of women in the Malayalam film industry has changed all that. 17 women have actually come forward and spoken about what has happened to them, and they have filed official complaints with the special task force set up by the Kerala government. But remember, this is not about any one industry. The perpetrator that Sowmya or Sujata is talking about is actually a Tamil director. And we are hearing echoes of sexual abuse being rampant in the Tamil film industry. There are also women speaking out in the Telugu film industry. To talk about everything she's experienced and the larger message that she'd want at this point to go out to women everywhere, let me welcome our guest on the program today. We know her as actor Sowmya. Her real name is Sujata. And I'm going to address her as Sujata, though many of our viewers may know her as actor Sowmya. Thank you so much, Sujata, if I may call you that, for talking to us, for sharing your trauma. The trauma doesn't subside or dim no matter how many years pass. And so I have some understanding of how difficult it is for you to do this. Every time you have to talk, it's like reliving what happens. And even when you don't talk, you live with it. So thank you for your courage and for your willingness to talk. And in that, give courage to other women to talk as well. Let me start by asking you to turn the clock back. Once again, only on your terms and only with the extent to which you're comfortable. I don't want anything to traumatize you all over again. You have spoken about being groomed. You talk about this couple who were very kind to you. You were very young. You were 18. You had no idea of how the industry worked. They earn your trust, and then the man proceeds to sexually force himself on you, eventually raping you, and quote unquote treating you like a sex slave. Some of the details are truly horrific, and we'll come to them. Let's start with Sujata Urf Sowmya being an 18-year-old, trying to get into this industry, coming from a very sheltered background, meeting this Tamil director and his wife. How does the grooming start? How do they earn your trust? And how does that trust get blown to smithereens?
Okay, thanks, Barkha, for agreeing to speak to me. I really appreciate it. So I do want to set the context. So 18 is not when the grooming starts, right? I was already 18, but I was the product of a society which grooms young children, particularly girls, in certain ways that we've already discussed, and I'm happy to go into that. But suffice to say, I was trained to be a highly obedient, good girl who would respect authority, and by respect, that meant blind obedience to authority, right? You pretty much don't have a voice, because if you raise it, you're going to be punished. That was the situation no matter where I went, home, school, everywhere. Okay, so that's the context. Now, I did not plan on a career in the films. I did not want a career in the films. I will say, like any other kid growing up in India back then, I was enamored by the movies. And so that was the thing. Now, I'm in college. I'm in my first year. I've come out of a girls' school. Okay, I'm in a co-ed college. First few months, I have a lot of attention from boys, but I know exactly how to ward it off. I'm not interested, never had a romantic connection. One of my theater friends put me on sent my information to somebody she knew, and they reached me. This couple I'm talking about, they reached out to me for a screen test, right? So I fought my mom, who was completely anti this whole thing. My dad was kind of, I was his pet. So he sent me, he said, it's fine. So I go to their house. I talked to this couple. She is a very well-known Southern actor. Okay, I had known of her. I had watched several of her movies. Him, I had never heard of, didn't know anything about him. When I went there, I got real negative vibes from the man. So I came back home and I told my parents I didn't want to do this. I came back home with a high fever that lasted until the next day. So my body was telling me that this energy wasn't okay for me. I did speak up, right? At that point, this woman, this actor wife, calls my father and proceeds to persuade him. And basically, we know nothing about movies. So she says, I have recorded songs with her in mind. I have spent so many lakhs of rupees. You can't do this to us. So it felt like we were reneging from some contract we'd never signed. And my father, being the upright man that he was trained to be, said, this is not fair to them, you should do it, right? So then I go ahead, I start visiting their home. So they have this sprawling fortress of a home where they conduct rehearsals, right? So now they're mentoring me in the language, then they conduct dance rehearsals for me. So they're basically shaping me to be this actor they want me to be. However, this man, so the agreement was that he would not interact with me. This lady had agreed, on paper, she was the director of the movie. So she had told my father, don't worry, I will be directing her. I will be working with her. She will not need to interact with my husband. That was the agreement. So we go for our first outdoor schedule to another state. And there is this man giving me the strong, silent, angry treatment. Mind you, he's a 6'2" big man, right? And he talks indirectly through his wife. And it's like, I will never look at you, that kind of treatment. And that gave me the creeps. It also made me very anxious. But I managed the schedule, being the good kid I was. I did everything right. And of course, they were pleased with my work. And so then I become the favorite, right? Now they start treating me like their daughter. They every day buy me milkshakes and they spoil me royally. And I wasn't spoiled at home. This felt really nice. So we come back and then I attend these rehearsals in their home before the second schedule. That's when, by now he knew that I was open, and I was also I no longer trusted myself because I thought I had made a mistake by misjudging him, because I knew his wrath and I didn't want it anymore. So now he knew. So once when the wife was out, we were having a conversation about movies or whatever. The man steps forward, says, I love you, and kisses me, right? Now he's almost 40 years old and I'm 18, right? So I have called him uncle and then proceeded to call him sir. So he is a father figure. When he does this, and I've never been touched before in any kind of romantic way, I completely freeze. But the first feeling I remember is disgust. And I still feel that feeling when I think of that moment, right? Then frozen, and I have no memory, Barkha, about that night. No other memory. I know that he didn't proceed any further, and I know I went back home. He dropped me home. And then the next day, so that night, I don't know how I've slept, but clearly thinking about, should I tell my friends? I want to tell my friends, but I don't know how to do this, because what if, all these questions, maybe I'm the one, what did I do here? He touched me, and I'm feeling disgusted with myself. So there's no way I'm going to tell anybody that I am in shame, right? So then I continue going, because who's going to make a big deal already? All the adults have come together saying, you should do this movie now, right? So I don't want to be a problem again. I go back, and then gradually he ramps it up. He starts touching me anytime in between rehearsals. Mind you, his wife might be upstairs. My male co-star is also practicing with me, but he would find me in another room or call me, summon me to another room, and he would proceed to grope. right? With time, Barkha, and this I want to make very clear, I am sure my body responded and what seemed like positively to him because he touched me and my nerves were sensitive. Okay, so it looks like consent, but it's the frozen mind. The brain is not functioning. You're just standing there like a puppet being groped everywhere. And guess what? This is not new. I'm used to being groped in buses all along. Nobody has done shit about it all those years. So here's one more person doing the same thing to you, except that he's an elderly person now and he's an authority figure, right? So I don't even have the energy to push him. I'm just frozen. So he does this for a while. And then on the other side, this husband and wife couple tell everybody, the press, my family, and everybody that, oh, she's so wonderful. She's like our own daughter. And then the woman says, I have this daughter. She looks just like you, but she treated us very badly. She accused him of rape. And now she's left the house, and I'm so sad without her. But she did this. And the man says, this girl, she came on to me. This kid was 19 years old. Beautiful girl. This man is far from good looking, right? But she came on to me, is what I've
And the and the wife, sorry, I didn't want to break
Yeah.
your
Go ahead. Go ahead.
your thought, but the wife of this man, the director, the actor wife of this director, her own daughter alleges abuse, and the mother doesn't believe her daughter.
Course. Of course, she never believed her daughter. She kicked her out of her house, from whatever I've heard. And by the way, Barkha, the press had already come out with the story by then. The Chennai press, right? So we had all heard about this story, but everybody thought the daughter was nuts because that was how she was portrayed. She's crazy. She says this thing about her own mom. How could she? And so I fell for that. I really thought she was nuts, right? And this man clearly made it out like he was a victim here, right? So now that's my context, right? So all my empathy is coming out. I've always been empathetic. Now it's all coming out for this woman who doesn't have a daughter, and I'm trying to fill in her daughter's shoes, right? Be the person they both want me to be. And this man says, I don't have a child. My wife doesn't want me to have, she doesn't want to have another child. I will be childless, and you are my child. So they did this for a few months, right? So I became part of this family, the fake family.
And did she know, you think, what he was doing to you?
See, how can I say? Based on whatever I've heard, how can you not know? I have gone through that age. I'm now in my 50s. She was 42 years old, Barkha, if not more. How can a woman who's been married thrice by then, right, has gone through the industry, lived her entire life in the industry, how could she not sense what was going on under her roof? I don't get it. But I cannot answer that question, right? Whether she knew or not for sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay, go on. And then what happens?
So then by now I'm their daughter, right? And then there was this shot, and I vaguely remember I'm supposed to dress as a bride, right? I'm wearing this bridal sari, the South Indian sari. And he says, so he starts prepping me, I think a week in advance. I don't remember the timeline, but he starts talking about that day. You are going to be a bride, right? And I don't know if he's supposed to tie the Mangal Sutra for me, or I'm confused about what was going on in that shot. But he basically says, that is the day I will take you, right? I remember the words, I will take you, right? So it's like we're going to be married, and that's the day we will consummate our marriage, right? And for me, every word of his was like the gospel that time. He was my mentor. I looked up to him. He was on a pedestal, right? So I'm really probably 12 psychologically at that point, right? So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be. So we come back from the shoot. I'm still in my bridal sari. I remember being on the bed, and him coming on top of me. And the moment he entered me, the pain, I remember the pain. And before he entered me, I think I was tightening up before, right? I'm starting to tighten up because this is scary, right? And so he tries. Clearly he's not able to because I'm not ready. So I'm like in pain and I'm pushing him, and he gets mad. He gets mad and he says something to me, right? So I think I might have frozen again. I don't know, Barkha. Then he proceeds to do whatever he needed to do. I just remember being stunned at the end of it, because everything the movies had talked about sex was far from what I had experienced, right? There was nothing pleasant, nothing romantic, nothing happy about it, nothing loving about it either. Yeah.
Uh, it's difficult to hear, so I can only imagine how difficult it is for you to recount it, live alone, live it. But I want to try and understand the feeling. If you remember the feeling from then, is it fear? Is it confusion? Is it intimidation? Is it not knowing? Is it all of the above? Is this man frightening to you, but at the same time you find yourself dependent on him? The asymmetry of power, of age, of experience. There's so much going on here, right? It's a lot.
Everything you said, all of it. And then the young girl's fantasy that movies had by then already imprinted, of this, the man who touches you, the man who says he loves you, is going to be your man who will take care of you, protect you, and you owe it to this man to return the love. So it was all of that.
You said that he treated you like a sex slave. There's an account where you talk about rods inserted in your private parts in your genitals. How does this man go from, you're my daughter, first completely debasing that nomenclature by doing what he does to you, and then reaching actual overt, all of it is abusive, but then it becomes overtly more abusive clearly when rods are thrust into your genitals. How does that happen? And again, please only speak if you're comfortable doing so. I don't want to push you in any way because I have some understanding of how difficult it is to talk about this.
Actually, it's not difficult. I'm quite comfortable talking about it.
I am very, very, in a way, I don't know if happy is the right word, but I'm happy to hear that because you know what? This whole sort of silence, culture of silence, we let other people own our lives, our experience, our emotion. And I am happy to hear that you're comfortable talking about it. And so I would want to know, how does this happen? There's obviously, it happens incrementally. So rods in your genitals,
So
violence.
prior to all that, the way he starts is by teaching me, literally training me how to give him oral sex, give him blowjobs, right? And I remember the disgust I felt, Barkha. So he literally trained me. This is how you do it. No, 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 this is not how you do it. And that's why the slavery, right? I'm literally on my knees and he's teaching me, right? And he forces me to, and I don't think I've said this before, but to swallow his semen every time. And I want to gag. And I remember when he's not watching, running to the bathroom and spitting it out. But I don't think he would have, he made it clear that I'm supposed to swallow it, right? So I'm scared to even let him know that I hate it, right? So that's that kind of slavery, right? So I will be sleeping, Barkha. He would literally wake me up in the night, in the middle of the night, to give him blowjobs. That's slavery, right? We would, so he was teaching me driving because I was supposed to have a driving shot in the movie. So I'm literally, I think he was driving me to the place where we're supposed to practice. He's on the driver's seat. Guess what I'm doing as the guy next to him, right? So this kind of slavery. So it's that. Then I don't remember if it was more than one time, but this I had literally blocked out the incident about the metal rod. I had blocked it out until a couple years ago, a friend of mine. So this is this thing, metal instrument or rod that some people use as a weapon. So this man used to keep it under his pillow in case there was an intruder, and he would use that on them. Correct. So one of my friends was showing me his arsenal of knives and whatever. And then I saw this rod. It was a video call 2 years ago. And I said, goodness, I remember this thing now. And I told my friend this. That's when I remembered. So this rod, this man decided to insert into me. And I think he told me it'll be good, right? It'll feel good. And I am so grateful to God that he didn't destroy anything internally, right? I'm glad, because he's capable of savagery from whatever I've heard later. And I escaped mildly is what I will say based on that. Nothing happened to me. So yeah, so he inserted that. And for me, now that I think about it, I was a toy. I was a toy. I was just a body that he could manipulate any which way he wanted to, and he didn't. And there's nothing. I think I literally was enslaved in so many ways, psychologically, physically, emotionally, in every way. And interestingly, then he also isolated me by then. So remember, I was in my first year of college. So I still went to school. Every day I went to college, right? I have a life there, but he tells me, my friends are no good. They don't care for me. My parents are not good. They don't care for you. You shouldn't be involved in any college activities because you're an actress. You need to behave like an actress. And everybody, he would warn me against everybody I'd known all my life. And in my mind, it's just so confused. I'm leading these two very different lives. So that's the other piece of this one. Why I didn't say anything is an abuser silences you. Make sure you don't have any avenue.
Yeah. So just to state the obvious, but for the sake of clarity, your first sexual experience in life is assault.
Rape. Let's call it rape.
Rape.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it started with the forced kiss and it ends in rape, and that's why I said assault.
Yes.
But yes,
Yes.
your first sexual experience in life is rape.
Oh, absolutely. Romantic and sexual, everything, all of it. That was my first.
And you think this memory of the rods in your private parts was something that you had blocked out, and that it only came back when your friend showed you something similar and you were like, oh my God, perhaps you suppressed that
Oh,
memory
I
somewhere
think
deeper than.
I don't think I've come out with even 10% of what really happened possibly in all those years, in that 1 year, right? A lot of it has to have been suppressed. There's no other way I would have survived, Barkha, that time and later. If I had not blocked, I mean, I'm not consciously blocking, right? It happens.
I want to briefly dwell on the role of his wife, and I'll tell you why. One, because it's important to understand that men can be feminists and women can be misogynists, because there's a massive patriarchy machine. But you said that she was or is a well-known actor. She'd been in 3 marriages. She chose to not believe her own daughter when her daughter spoke about abuse. Was she weak, or was she an enabler, or is it the same thing?
Let me tell you, maybe you can figure this out. Okay. So just today, so the time that I spoke out about this was 3 days ago, right? I did a YouTube video with my aunt, Mrs. Lakshmi Ramakrishnan, who's a very prominent film personality in the South, right?
Yeah.
This woman that we are discussing now, the actor, the prominent actor in the South, not my aunt, the other woman, right? Part of the couple. She has called my aunt today and shamed me. Okay.
What do you
She has
mean?
called,
The perpetrator's wife,
yes. So she
the
has
well-known actor,
yes.
has called your aunt and attacked you.
and attacked me and shamed me, slut shamed me actually, because she has said, her words are, what kind of vulgar stuff has this girl talked? So my aunt's response was, before I say anything more, please hang up the phone. And that's how this call ended today. This happened today, right? So can you imagine now? Do I have to tell you what kind of personality this could be?
Yeah. You know, you have chosen to not name this director, though I think that anyone who does follow the Tamil industry may have educated guesses by now
Yeah.
because well-known actor, married 3 times, husband is a director, daughter has abused the stepfather of rape, has been shunted out. I think there's a lot there to piece together in terms of identity. But I want to ask you, are you planning to disclose the identity to the police? And it's complicated because Kerala has the task force, but the man is in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu doesn't have the task force looking into the Hema Committee report. What are you planning to do? Because you have given in this conversation enough indications as to the identity of this couple. I think anyone who follows the film industry might know. I'm not pushing you on that, obviously, in this conversation. I want to understand what you're thinking of doing.
I want to talk to the cops and whoever is in that jurisdiction. I don't know. I don't live there. So I'm trying to talk to my trusted sources there so I can do this ASAP.
So you are not planning to just leave this at the level of I've spoken about it, that's enough. You do want to speak to the police.
Yes, and because I have now realized that if only somebody had listened to their daughter, to her daughter back then, I might have been spared. And who knows what else has happened after me. I probably wasn't the last victim in that household. And it saddens me that I didn't stop it then.
So we're talking about a man whose wife is famous. You're young. The man has been accused by his stepdaughter of rape. She's been shunted out. The wife has chosen to believe the husband. You are sexually assaulted, enslaved, raped, groomed, and then raped, while all the while he's calling you his daughter. How do you get out of this? What happens?
So thankfully, I was in college and I had a seemingly normal life. I had friends my age and I was doing really well in my, academically. I was in the theater. So I think that kind of kept me, part of me. We have different parts. So there was this college going teenager, Sujata, who was still functioning and was smart and actually was a feisty kid, always has been. But there was this other part that had been so conditioned by society. That was the frozen part. So think of it as literally two different parts within me, right? This
Yeah.
part kind of knew all along, I'm sure, on some level, and decided to finally take a step. It had become torturous because my family was increasingly mad at me
Did they
for
know? Did they
no,
know?
no, no, nobody, not one person knew. But they were mad at me because I spent so much time at this couple's home. And so I couldn't explain to my parents what was going on. Right. And then this couple would isolate me in their fortress. So basically, at some point, I realized that this man and his words, there was a part of me that was hoping, oh, maybe we are going to have this life that he's talking about, because he used to tell me about this fantasy life all the time, right? In my young mind, I'm like, okay, he means it. Oh, he wants a child with me. He wants to marry me, and all the BS that he gave me. And then at some point, I did realize he was. So, by the way, I want to tell you, Barkha, he's not a director. He's not a famous director. He did some 3 movies, has done nothing after that for 35 years, right? So she is the
But
one. She is the
so
name.
the power and the fame is his wife's.
and the money. Okay.
And the money.
Yeah, yeah.
This
So
did the movie ever happen?
the movie came and it was gone within like a few days, because guess what, on paper she's the director, but he directed the movie because this was his launch pad, because he had been flopping, right? So this was his launch pad, and she gave him the opportunity, and the movie failed miserably, and he sat home after that. So now there is this person who drinks every day, and he's completely disgruntled, bitter, right? That's the other side of him, by the way, that I'm experiencing every day, right? Angry, and we would summon you and then go on this lecture about the film industry and how badly he's been treated. And I've listened to hours of lectures, right? So this was this man, and today it's 35 years from now. I don't think he's done anything. I don't know. I don't live in India. I don't think he's done
Yeah.
anything really noteworthy so far, right? So then I am stuck between these worlds, and at some point I realized this is not good for me. I'm sure God spoke to me and said, "Come on, get out."
Yeah.
So I left home. Because I used to run between, I mean, whenever things got really crazy at my place, I would run away to this house. Then then I would run back home. So but there was this final attempt to come back home, and I stayed on.
Yeah. I think this was not even the only time you experienced harassment and abuse, right? I mean, this is a lot, and my God, but I was reading some of your other accounts, and after the Malayalam film industry is confronting its giant Me Too moment, and there are women coming out naming big names. We've had Ranjit, Siddiq, Jai Surya, all named by women. You have said that it's not that you got out of this and then your life normalized and then you found kindness or equity or men who treated you well. I think there's this horrible account about how you mentioned that somebody spat pan on your face. There's another account where you say that somebody who's already been named in the wake of the Hema Committee allegations is someone you experienced harassment in the hands of as well. What happens after you escape the clutch of this couple? What happens? What is your experience of being female in the industry?
So the other movies that I did in Malayalam were still at the time when I was in their clutches, right? So
I
they
see.
were my mentors. So they would decide what movies I would be taking up. They would agree with the producers and then tell me where to go. So they were still conducting the affairs for me. Their her makeup person was sent with me to monitor situations. So that part was all the same year. Okay. So I did Malayalam movies around the same time, but this was all during summer break of college. So yeah.
And what happens? This thing of someone spitting in your face.
Yeah, so in the Malayalam film industry, it was finding out that the hotel that I stayed in for my very first movie, I heard that junior artists and hairdressers would be summoned to the rooms in the same hotel of the directors and the male actors there, right? So when I heard that, I remember distinctly a feeling of terror, because I could see those rooms from my room, right? That then changes to the final take. So during rehearsals, things would go a certain way. The final take, sometimes, I'm not saying every time, but what happened to me in this situation was that there is this fight sequence and these men are pulling and pushing me, and we practice that. And then the final take, when these men are pulling, pushing me, there's this villain guy who had a mouthful of pan, and the next thing I knew, it's all on my face. He spat it on me. That was nobody had told me about it. That wasn't a part of the rehearsal. So all I remember is, again, shock, but what am I doing about it? I just probably went and washed my face and moved on, right? Then there's another instance where I was asked, so this woman, the actress, the lady, had signed me up without my permission, of course, because she used to
The
lead everything.
direct the director's wife, the
the
abusive, the
She's the
rapist
director.
director's wife.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. So
yes.
she agreed for me to do this movie, and the way she described it to me was, oh, there is one scene in the water. You're going to be wearing, do you know what a mund is? The South Indians wear an off shoulder mund. Okay. So she basically said, little bit of the shoulders will be bared, but we know how to do that. You can wear something transparent or cover it with your hair. uh, so she sent me off, packed me off for this shoot, right? And I told the director, I am not comfortable with that shot of my bare shoulders. My father is also not comfortable. Can we please do something? Can I cover it up or do something? And he basically said, don't worry, it'll go only till your neck. I'll tell the cameraman. You're not going to. So you just go get into the water. And then he tells the cameraman in front of me, okay, shoot only till here. And I believe him. But then the final, when I see the screening, it's the entire shoulder. So things like that, I couldn't trust people.
Yeah. Can I ask you that you had these, as you said, kind of schizophrenia in your life? You had this normal college life, and then you had this couple where the man is raping you and enslaving you. When you finally get out of their clutches, does he chase you to bring you back? Does he say, okay, fine, go? What happens? Like, how does this end?
So a few months later or so, I must have met my then husband in college, right? So I met him there, and we started a romantic relationship. And guess what? I'm feeling guilty that I'm cheating on this man, right? This original man. So I take my boyfriend over to their place. I tell him, you wait outside here, because I don't know how this man's going to react, right? So I told my boyfriend to stay outside. I went to confess to this man that I'm actually seeing somebody now. I go there, and he says something nasty about how my boyfriend looks. Okay, way better looking than this man, right? He says something, and I argue with him. Sorry, what did you want to say?
No, I was going to say that won't even be material, how the looks were. I mean, this man was a abuser. So,
He's
I would
talking
just,
about the looks because he wanted
correct.
to tell
I
me I am better than he is. What sort of a
got it.
rotten guy have you got? This is what he
Hmm,
said to me, right? Who the
hmm,
heck have
hmm,
you found? So then I argued with him. I said, well, and then the words came out finally, but you took advantage of me, sir, right? And the next thing I know, he's grabbed me by my neck and pushed me against the headboard of the bed, right? That was the first time he physically assaulted me like that. I got scared. That I really got scared. So then I remember rushing out of their home. I took my boyfriend away from there. I don't think I told my boyfriend until much later when we got married. So what he did was, so even, yeah. So that I think was really probably close to the end of my communication with them. I did invite, I still don't understand this, but I did invite both of them for my wedding, and they didn't come. They didn't show up. But their daughter did show up for my wedding. And I think after that, I moved away to this country, thankfully.
yeah. I think it's important to talk about how we understand consent with that awareness today, and how we used to understand consent, and which is why a lot of the disgust is directed at ourselves instead of at the person doing this to us. I mean, I think back to how differently the world would look at Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton today from the way we did when it happened, right?
Yes.
I'm not trying to give you an exact mirror of what you went through at all, but I'm just saying that this older, frightening man, a young, sexually inexperienced woman, rooted in all of the cultural conditioning of our society, confused, unaware, frightened, scared. At the same time, probably for something, looking up at some age to this man who looks very, it takes distance to know how much banality there is even in the claims of such men to mentorship. When is the first time that you are able to say what happened to you out loud to another human being?
Um, I got I got married within a few years of that incident, and within the first year, things started falling apart for multiple reasons. Okay, and I remember going to a psychologist at that point, and I think I talked about. I said that I had a relationship with a married man. This is what I said to the psychologist, right? Because I believed I had an affair, right? That's what I believed for the longest time. And she had written, I remember her notes saying, Sujata has been psychologically and emotionally abused, and has some level of stunting. She said she's been stunted at that age because of what she's experienced, right? I didn't understand any of that. Of course, I was not a psychologist. I didn't get what she said. I remember the word abuse, but I didn't buy it at that point. So what she was saying was, I'm stuck at age 18. I might have been 20 something by then, but I was stuck at 18. And Barkha, for years, I was stuck at 18 psychologically. Because what
And
happens now, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that the thing that never gets said out loud is that survivors of abuse, have a very complicated relationship with sex, even in relationships that are more gentle. And I think this needs to be said.
What happens is, for them to even find those gentle relationships is a hard thing. So
Yeah.
what happens with trauma is, then you find more and more triggers in your life. You keep getting re-traumatized. That's what happens, right? In different ways. There's until you truly break out of that cycle by relieving the body of the trauma, because what's stored in your body is what replays itself again and again and again. You attract that kind of energy too, because you think that's what you deserve, Barkha. This is very important for people to know. Okay,
So
so this
did you live with years of self-loathing?
decades, not years, decades. Self-loathing, very low self-confidence, self-esteem. For a girl who had been, until 18, literally looked up to, as I was the leader in everything. I was the head girl of my school. I was the top student, like everything, right? For that girl, if you had seen me, and all my friends tell me, people who knew me from back then, when they saw me, that during the next 20 years, they said, we don't even know who this Sujata is. We didn't even, they told me this later. They were like, we couldn't even recognize you. So what I became was this completely compliant, I don't deserve, so I will now do whatever you all tell me to do. And this came about beautifully and sarcastically, because the family, which is a microcosm of society, also colludes without knowing it. They become a part of the constant re-triggering of the abused. They re-trigger her because they're so hung up on what will people say, society's rules. So then what happens is, a woman who can't already speak up, when she even attempts to speak up in other areas, she's quickly shut down. So for
Yeah.
me, years of being shut down made me this compliant person, like the shell of who I was. And it's only after all the work that I've done therapeutically that I am now back, not just who I was, but in a way more powerful way. I can feel it.
I'm glad to hear that. In the end, I want to ask you. Obviously, the Hema Committee report, with all of its limitations, a 5-year delay in coming out, all of that, gave you some context, gave you some new context to say, you know what, the decades of silence is over. I need to go public with this. You're planning to take it to the cops. Because it's about rape. The cops should actually reach out to you, but if they don't, I think you've told me that you're planning to reach out to them anyway. I want to ask you, in the end, what would you want young women, See, there's a thing about being in your 50s. I'm 52, and unfortunately, it takes women to get into your 50s or 40s before you start being able to like not give a shit about what people say. It just
Yeah.
takes you that long of living.
Yes.
What would you want to say to young women who are listening to you today?
Oh, Barkha, I want to say a lot. I don't, not directly to young women, because who needs to empower them? It is the family that needs to empower them. So I really want to say something to our families to let us put women at the head of our families. Let us declare that they lead our families, because children, boys or girls, when they are raised with the strength and the power and the gentleness of a woman, they are going to imbibe that. Whether it's a boy or girl, it doesn't matter. You're not going to produce either puppets like me or bullies, monsters like him, because everybody will be trained to take both their masculine and feminine parts and integrate them, and also teach our children to trust their bodies. Listen to them when they say something is off. I don't want to talk to this uncle, I don't want to be near this auntie. Allow that. Don't make them puppets.
Yeah, I just want to read out in the end a comment from one of the members of our community. It's from a guy, Tarun Kaushik, who says stories like this make me wonder how normalized such acts have been made. It makes me think of all the power some quote unquote great actors this is have, and I think it's important to say that actually even after the Hema Committee, some of the biggest stars of the industry, they're not they're not taking a position. They may not be accused of abuse, but they're not taking a position. Does that surprise you, disappoint you?
It doesn't surprise me one bit. When you don't get surprised, you don't get disappointed, because that's what you expect, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it when I was 18 years old. This was so normalized, and it's still
Yeah.
till today. If I'm being shamed by my perpetrators, then what can I expect? Let's
Yeah.
hope though for change.
Absolutely. And I think every time somebody actually comes out and speaks, like you have done, there is hope in just that process. Maybe I don't know how this ends. I don't know if this man is brought to justice. I don't know what happens with the cops. You have said you will go to them. But I think in the very speaking, in the very lifting of the veil of secrecy around these, in the very letting go of the self-loathing, in the very letting go of, redirecting the shame. It's so important to redirect the shame, and sometimes it takes an entire life. Sujata, screen name is Sowmya, I want to thank you, and we're here for you when you want to speak again, when you want to take this forward. Here for you and every other woman who's gone through this and is battling for justice. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you, Barkha. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Vote Her Story and support independent, robust journalism.